like to call this public hearing, regular school board meeting, July 20th, 2020, of the Board of Trustees of the San Felipe CISD to order. This meeting will be conducted by video conference in accordance with the governor's authorization concerning suspension of certain open meeting law requirements for COVID-19 coronavirus disaster. Madam Secretary, would you call roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Contreras?
Contreras here.
Webb? Ms. Webb?
Linda Webb is here.
Ms. Haynes?
Amy Haynes is here.
Mr. Mesa?
Here.
Mesa is here. Mr. Overfeld?
Present.
Mr. Smith? Myself.
Smith is here.
Sir, we have a quorum.
And Diana Gonzalez. Let the record show that we do have a quorum of board members and that this meeting has been duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. At this time, we will have opening ceremonies, first with a moment of silence for personal reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item of business that we have tonight is again, item 5 on our agenda, citizens to be heard. On March 16th, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meeting laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic or video conference meetings in response to coronavirus, COVID-19. As we would at any in-person meeting, members of the public who have followed the instructions on the meeting notice for registering to speak during the public comment portion will be unmuted for 5 minutes to speak. If the speaker submitted written documents or comments in advance, the board secretary will read the comments into record before or during the board's consideration of that item. There were no comments submitted. Under the Texas Open Meetings Act, the board is not permitted to discuss or act upon any issues that are not posted on the agenda for the meeting. Rules of order and decorum will be enforced during the public comment period to ensure efficient meetings. We have one person who has met the requirements and who has signed up to speak. The name is Erica Barrera. The topic is online learning. And again, submitted all the paperwork necessary. At this time, we will allow the public comment portion of our meeting. Who has met the requirements, who has signed up to speak. The name is Erica Barrera. The topic.
Hello, board members and Dr. Rios. President Mesa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Okay, so good evening, board members, President Mesa and Dr. Rios. My name is Erica Barrera and I'm a teacher here in our district. I'm here today to speak to you about the reopening of schools. Let me first start off by saying that I have the utmost respect for every single one of you, Dr. Rios, President Mesa, every single one of your board members, as you hold the power of deciding the fate of our district. In our district, we have a total number of 10,425 students and total employees of 1,447. This information is straight from the TEA website. Of those 10,425 students, it was stated in a press release from our district that 38% of those students said they will be coming in the fall in person. Doing the math, that's 3,962 students that are saying they are going to be walking through the doors and attend school. 3,962 students. And I'm pretty sure that number will be higher once we will reach every single student and get their response. So once we get in contact with the student body and 100% response, it's going to go up. So let's round that, get to a friendly number. Let's go to 4,000. So 4,000 plus 1,447 employees, that's equal to 5,447. Basic third grade math, we are looking at 5,447 lives. Okay, we're talking about every single life that works in our district, a teacher, and the children that will be with us in person. Now, that's a lot of lives in your hands right now. So I'm here to say that teachers, parents, and concerned citizens would like for the school district to remain online for as long as possible. Since TEA has given the district the opportunity to stay online for up to 8 weeks, depending on how the community and the county is doing, well, as we all know, we're not doing too great in Del Rio. Our hospital is at its breaking point. Nurses are overworked. They are short-staffed, and the governor just dispatched the U.S. Navy to come and help our hospital. These patients who have the COVID-19 virus, they are here to help them, and not to mention the refrigerator truck that has been mentioned in our community meetings. We are in a not good position, and we all know this. Dr. Rios, we know that you were recommending 3 weeks of online, and then rather than 3 weeks, a lot of teachers, a lot of parents are concerned about only those 3 weeks. I'm here today to put on the table that we need at least to be online for the first 6 weeks, or please as long as possible. We are putting the lives of our students, the lives of teachers at risk, and it's absolutely not okay. Opening up school is not the solution to beating this coronavirus. As soon as we allow in-person instruction, there will be positive cases in our district coming from teachers, coming from students, coming from the custodial staff, coming from administrators, and whoever does test positive, they have the possibility of dying. We know this. This is the reality. They can die, and they're dying because there's no cure. There is no vaccine. There is nothing that is going to help this right now in this pandemic. There is nothing. In the ICU units, they are doing their absolutely best, but there's still not a cure. There's nothing to help some of these people that are suffering from this virus. And as we see it right now in our hospital, it's not good. Families are being torn apart. Board members and Dr. Rios, please realize that as soon as we open the doors and as soon as students start coming into the buildings by the hundreds, at this time, it's going to spread, and it's going to spread like wildfire. And we all know this, and we can't ignore that fact. Please realize that the 3 weeks, Dr. Rios, is not enough time to give our community the chance of trying to get our hospital in a better shape. They are not good, and we know this. We know it's fact that as educated adults that the virus spreads when people gather, when people are in unventilated rooms, and if it's not even safe for us to be sitting together in a room, it's not going to be safe for students to be sitting in a classroom this soon. A Yahoo.com news report on July 8th stated that the second wave of COVID hit Israel like a tsunami. Schools were chaotically reopened, and then as infections soared, they reshuttered. No place on earth has seen a spike of morbidity like Israel's. In a testimony to the Israeli parliament, Dr. Udi Kilmer reported that schools, not gyms, not restaurants, not anything else, but the schools turned out to be the country's worst mega infectors. End quote. We can prevent this from happening here in our community, in our city, and in our district, because you have the power to keep it online for as long as possible, for as long as Governor Abbott allows us to. And they are begging us to stay home. The mayor is begging us to stay home to stop the spread. We are all home right now because it's safe, or in our isolated offices, and because you're abiding by the law. So let's help people stay home and allow school to be fully online with longer period of time, more than the 3 weeks. With the COVID-19 in our community, we have not significantly seen a spike in children yet because children have been refrained from going into the public. But as soon as children start coming into our house, start coming out of their houses and start going into the public and start going into these classrooms and gathering together, we all know it's not going to be a good combination. It's not going to be good for the teachers. It's not going to be good for the students. We have seen a teacher in national news who has died teaching summer school using the precautions with the guidelines in place, and it still took her life. It took her life.
Ms. Barrera,
Yes, sir.
the 5 minutes are up.
Oh, if you would let me continue, Dr. Mesa, just for a little bit. Okay, thank you. There are, and I'm telling you, board members, Dr. Rios, there's so many concerned teacher comments. There's so many questions, you know, and there's so many things like, and the most major thing from teachers is, what if I test positive? Or what if I have been exposed? I have to quarantine. My students have to quarantine? What do we teach from home? What happens if I'm exposed multiple times? What happens if my spouse is exposed? I'm exposed, then I can't go to work, and then my students were exposed because I've been around in this room. Are we gonna have, you know, are we gonna have the proper ventilation systems installed? Are we going to have any kind of air purifying systems for us? Are we prepared at this point in time in 3 weeks to open the first in August? It's not. I don't think we are. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but there are countless questions from teachers. I do want to point out, because I promised them that I would, life skills. What happens in life skills when we have them all so close together, when we have to pick them up? What happens? We can't social distance? That's impossible. What are we going to do? We don't know.
I'm going to have to tell you again, thank you for your comments, and we've exceeded the time.
Okay, thank you guys. And thank you. I appreciate the time. I appreciate you listening to me. And you have the power in your hands. Okay, please make the right decision. Thank you
very much. At this time, we are going to go into a public hearing. The public hearing is going to be the optional flexible school day program. Sandra, will you be doing this?
Yeah, Mr. Mesa, Sandra will be doing it. I just need for the control room to make me the host so that I can share the presentation.
I just want to tell board members there's a packet on your desk referring to this topic.
Good evening, Dr. Rios, Mr. Mesa, and members of the board. This evening, I'll be presenting to you the optional flexible school day program. It is a requirement of the school district to provide an update annually with regard to the optional flexible school day program. And there we go. So the Texas Education Code 29.0822 allows school districts to provide flexible hours and days of attendance for students who meet at least one of the requirements for the Texas Education Code. The goal of this program is to improve student graduation rates who are in danger of dropping out of school or who are failing coursework in a certain subject area. So as I mentioned earlier, we do hold the requirement to present an annual report and also to present to you the intention to submit an application. As we review annually, there are criteria that we need to review, but we also include information with respect to race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. The school district has to include high school graduation as one of the criteria, and those are the pertinent indicators for students participating in the optional flexible school day program. When we measure the criteria, we look at three primary areas, which is attendance, graduation rate, pathways to graduation, which are the credits that the students earn. The first I'd like to share is the attendance. The optional flexible school day program specifically targets students who struggle to attend school in a traditional setting due to extenuating circumstances. And when we offer this program, we provide students with an alternative method of obtaining their coursework. This last year, in 2018, let me start with this graph that you're seeing. In 2018-19, you'll see that the change here is in reference to the minutes, and we're looking at the 7,122.42. In 2019-20, you see 4,050.57, but I want to make a special note, and the note here is that due to COVID-19, this program was cut short. And so we did have a school closure. The number that you're seeing here is due to what was calculated up to the point where the students were attending school. Now, had we continued the school through the year, certainly this number would not be the same. You see right next to it, the refined ADA as well. The credits earned, when we look at the pathways to graduation, we're looking again, here I have a 3-year time span from 27-18 through 2019-20. In the blue, we see Del Rio High School and Blended Academy in the center, and then a district total. So in the first year, you'll see the what those numbers are in terms of the number of credits. And again, this will vary depending on the credits that the number of credits that the student may need. You'll see that in the second year, 2018-19, again, you'll see those number of credits. And then in 2019-20, again, you'll see the total number of credits that were earned. And again, the difference here is also the number of participants. So not just the number of credits that are being earned, but the number of students that are participating in an optional flexible school day program. And you'll see that the numbers at high school were smaller numbers. So as you are aware, this year, since we cut the year short, we also did not have state testing. But I want to show you what our Blended Academy did and look at the performance levels and how the optional flexible school day program allowed our students to not only earn their credit, but to do very well in their academic performance. And you'll see that in 2016, the comparison to 2017, and then in 2018, and you'll see the significant area that you see that our students did so well in your English 1 and English 2 and Algebra 1, and you're seeing that our students are really hitting it out of the park because we have this flexible time with our students. In our last frame, here we have our graduation rates, and I want again to everyone to take special note of this. Now, we look at Del Rio High School again, the number of students that participated were very minimal. These are a small number of students, but when we look at Blended Academy, in the first year, 27-18, we had 33 graduates. And last year, 18-19, we had 32. This year, we're proud to announce that we have 40 students that are graduating under this program. So you'll see that this particular program has been very beneficial, particularly to students who are attending the Blended Academy, and it's providing them these opportunities to meet their ultimate goal, which is graduation. The next steps and how do we get this accomplished? Well, we do have to fill out an application. As a district, we have to submit an application this year. We will submit an application only for the Blended Academy. We will work with the team at the Blended Academy, the counselors and the teachers who are going to be identifying students who would best fit into this program. And they will develop an individualized progress plan for them. So they'll identify the areas of need that they have, review what previous patterns they may have had, and certainly work with them so that we could develop a good plan towards graduation and help them be successful. The requirement is in every year is to monitor the student participation. As you know, they're all required to provide a log daily, to have interaction with their students daily, and to make sure that they're constant communication with the students so that they could support the student in whatever their needs are, whether it may be attendance or it may be working on a subject matter, or even coursework where it's a tested area so that they can complete their credits. And this is the end of the presentation. Are there any questions?
Sandra, I just want to make a comment. I think, you know, in past years, those students that did not earn the credits dropped out. They did not walk across to get their diploma. There's been such a great effort in this past few years to have this, again, optional flexible day and bring our graduates back to states so they can receive their diploma. Friday, I think there was one summer graduation, and that is a prime example of that. Otherwise, these students that did not walk with their group would have gone as dropouts. It has made a tremendous difference in our number of graduates that we have. So, you know, I applaud the efforts of everyone in this district to continue this program as we have. It's shown great results. I don't know, Dr. Rios, if the public was given an opportunity to ask questions, because this is a public hearing.
Yes, sir. They could have called in just as the previous lady did.
Okay, were there any questions submitted that we know?
No, sir.
No
Mr.
questions.
Smith had his hand up. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, this is just a data question. I support the program. No issues there. When you go back 3 slides, when you look at the attendance rate on those, not attendance rate, the enrollment rate in those 3 years in question on slide 7. Was that unchanged, or did that change as well? Was that fluctuating those 3 years?
So we're certainly seeing an increase in the graduation rate. So there's a participation rates for students that are entering into the Blended Academy, those opportunities. But the great thing is we're starting to see a great balance of students that are in their home campus that are doing exceptionally well also. I probably don't want to add more commentary to maybe middle school. I know that we start right at the 8th grade, but we catch them at a very early age in a grade and provide them that support. And one of the comments, or the comment that I hear all the time from parents, is that, wow, I didn't know that this is what it was, this program does. And once the students are in the program and they see the individualized attention, they feel this sense of relief and they are empowered to do very well. So I can't give you the exact numbers on the rate wise starting from the 8th grade, but I will tell you the success of the students at the Blended Academy are doing exceptionally well.
Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, Mr. Mesa, if I may,
Yes.
Mr. Smith, it has been the goal to increase the number of students that are serviced at Blended Academy. And to a certain extent, we have met that goal. We don't have the numbers to share with you right now, but the numbers have increased.
I was just more curious. I applaud the program and the efforts, and it obviously is working. So thank you. No additional work necessary. Just like you may have the answer.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Orfeld?
Yes, sir. I want to start by commending all the blended teachers who have been there from day one and who have come in and turned this into an amazing program because it does give a certain group of students within our district that who would normally, unfortunately, have fallen through the cracks and disappeared a chance to graduate. And I know one of the first graduates of Blended is now at Southwest Texas Junior College and continuing their education over there, which is amazing. And had this program not been in place, probably wouldn't have happened. For those students that kind of work this optional, provides that flexibility for them to continue their education while providing for their family because of economic times before this, and especially now coming into this new school year. But I'm so glad we started doing it. I'm so glad we did the Blended Academy. And again, a huge thank you to those faculty members there that give so much of themselves to those students. I know several of them who are just completely and utterly devoted to ensuring success. So thank you.
Dr. Rios?
Just an additional comment on how well it's gone. Right now, for the August graduation, we have 20 other students who have met the requirements to graduate this August from Blended, and we're probably going to have 28. So that would add 28 graduates to this year's program, which is exceptional. So good job to the students who stayed focused, and thank you to all the staff there that kind of huddled around them and called a good play for them. Good job.
Anyone else? Any questions? I just want to echo again what Josh, Mr. Orfeld said. You can see it at graduation, how these students identify with those teachers that insisted that they graduate, and they call on them because they're so proud of their teacher, again, struggling with them but yet reaching the end point of graduation. The fact that the parents are so happy at graduation, you can see it in their eyes, the balloons they bring and just how happy they are because they themselves have struggled with their own children, getting to that very important milestone in their life, graduation. So overall, it's a great program. I just am all for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
There being no questions, we will conclude this hearing and open up our regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. We don't have any board members report. We go into reports, and first item we have is item 8A, reopening schools for the 2021 school year. Dr. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. Members of the board, we have a presentation we're going to share with the board and the public today, and it'll definitely address a lot of the concerns regarding the opening of school. Over the next few minutes, we're going to discuss the TA updates regarding the rules for reopening school, a recommended school calendar. We're going to discuss how the instructional models have been selected, how we're doing on having a device for every student, and as well as internet connectivity, the staff development days that are planned, as well as training opportunities for parents and students. And then just briefly look at some reopening plans and some personal protective equipment that we have on hand and additional equipment that we're going to gain tomorrow. I'll start, Mr. Mesa, by discussing the TA's updates. Every Tuesday and Thursday, the commissioner has a Zoom meeting with all the superintendents in the state of Texas. This last week, they had one on Tuesday and Thursday, then had another one on Friday to outline some of the details. The first part that was shared was that we were reminded that the local education agencies do have the option to change their start and their end date. Other LEAs are starting after Labor Day, as late as Monday, September 7th. I will mention that the other school districts that are starting after Labor Day are starting immediately in a face-to-face mode, the traditional mode, and I'll share with you in a few minutes as to why that reason is. We're obviously not recommending that late of a start. We're recommending to start 2 weeks later than what we had initially planned to start. Regardless of when you start, you still have to comply with the 75,600 minute requirement. Now, TA did say, the commissioner did say that we could provide 100% online instruction for the first 4 weeks. The newspaper, the headlines are saying 8 weeks, but the reality is that it's only for the first 4 weeks, and you can choose to ask for an additional 4 weeks, but there's a whole lot of other requirements that have to be met. And we're not saying that we wouldn't make that recommendation, but we do have to go through the first phase first and then be able to identify why we would have the reason to ask for an additional 4 weeks. Right now, the recommendation is 3 weeks and then 1 week of transition, and I'll explain that in a little bit. So really, at the end of it, we are taking advantage of the full 4 weeks, but the 4th week is a transition period. However, in order to go online 100%, the district must ensure that every student has access to the internet and must ensure that every child has a learning device. It's one thing to declare we're going to go fully online, but every district that does that, they have to have a plan to provide both internet and a device to every student. And that's why it's so difficult for some districts, and rather than coming up with a different plan, they're going to choose to start face-to-face. Those that start, particularly the ones that start after Labor Day. Now, we can request an additional 4 weeks, and prior to that time, we'll have another discussion with the board and see if it's appropriate at that time. But we really cannot ask for it now because we don't know what's going to happen in the middle of September or where the statistics are going to be for the district. But when that point comes, there has to be a waiver application, and it has to include an indication as to what the local health conditions are at the time. The teacher, staff, and parents should be consulted about a transition plan before the waiver is submitted. So there has to be some dialogue with the community and with all stakeholders. The LEA, the school district, still has to allow students to access on-campus instruction if they come from a household without internet access or appropriate remote learning devices. What this means is that even now during the first 4 weeks, if we can't guarantee that everybody's going to have a device or internet connectivity, we still can't do the 100% online instruction. We must ensure that everybody has a device. Now, after planning with the cabinet and with the principals, we feel we can get there, and I'll be discussing that in a little bit. And we also have to have some on-campus instruction because those second 4 weeks, they're referring to it as a transition period where you're transitioning to online instruction a little at a time. So I wanted to clarify the misconception. The headlines are real quick to say they allow for 8 weeks instruction. Well, Once you get to read the details, you find that it's 4 weeks, and then there's a possible additional 4 weeks, but the additional 4 weeks are really transition period. Now here's what we're planning, or we're recommending. We're recommending that first we delay the first day of instruction to Wednesday, August 26th. And that the first 3 weeks or 15 school days to be 100% online instruction. Then the latter part of that week, which is getting into the fourth week, that we use them as phase-in days. That would mean that campuses bring in small groups of students each day until all students who've selected a traditional or hybrid model can transition into their selected model. For example, Garfield, who's right here next door to the building we're meeting in right now, Garfield could, for example, say kindergarten and first grade students are going to come to school on September 16th. And then they will use that day to teach all the protocols, the safety measures, arriving and dismissing, so that they're not having to deal with all the students that came or that are going to choose to come to school. Then the next day, they would bring in another 2 grades, second and third. Then on that Friday, they bring in 4th and 5th. Again, you don't have to have this type of transition, but they allow for it, but it has to be within that 4-week period. That's why we've decided to use 3 weeks of completely online, and then that 4th week to start the phase-in process. So in effect, we are using most of the days that are allotted of 4 weeks. Now, we are also recommending that we suspend all extracurricular and UIL participation until the first day of in-person instruction, which would again be September 16th. The calendar that's going to be recommended for adoption today, again, it changes the start date from August 10th is really when the teachers were going to start on August 3rd. Now they'll start on August 17th. That means teachers will now report to their campus for staff development until August 17th. The first day of school, August 6th. The traditional classes on campus wouldn't start until September 16th. And then the rest dates are just the end dates and the work days. But that's the start of the calendar. We've talked to 93% as of this morning, or at lunchtime when I last checked our sheet, we've talked to 93% of the parents. And of the 93% of the parents, which is a whole lot of the enrolled parents, I want to thank the principals and the team that they've assembled to help them call parents, because these are actual contacts with somebody at the household. We've had 36% of the students have selected the traditional model or the face-to-face. 49% have selected fully online, so that's almost 50%, and 11% have selected the hybrid model. We need, right now, we need approximately 1,692 devices. However, this week or today, we started calling the students who had selected the face-to-face, because we have to make sure that they too have a device and have internet connectivity. So we have to go back and make calls, but at least we already know that there's communication established with that household and the numbers would go quicker. Internet connectivity, we've identified 334 students, and students needing transportation, we've identified 877 students. The 877 students that need transportation represents about half, a little bit less than half of the students that traditionally use transportation. Now the learning devices, here's where it becomes a whole lot of work for our technology department. Pre-K through first grade, a total of 172 devices are needed. But in those grade levels, because it is a type of instruction called asynchronous, which is not necessarily face-to-face, they need only 172 devices, but we have 888 iPads. So we have more than enough to cover pre-K through first grade. Second through fifth grade, we need 472 devices. we don't have laptops available to check out to our second through fifth grade students. So what we're going to do is we're going to check out desktops, the actual desktops that are in there in the classrooms. The technology department is going to bubble wrap them or shrink wrap them, I think is the appropriate word, and they're going to write instructions on how to connect them, and they're going to help distribute them to the parents, the 472 parents identified. 6th through 8th grade, we need 543 devices. Right now, we only have 140 Chromebooks that are available. We have ordered an additional 800 Chromebooks, but we don't know when they're going to arrive. We hope that they arrive soon, but all the orders, you can imagine the whole United States is ordering all kinds of laptops and Chromebooks, so they are way behind. However, again, we have 1,000 desktops that we will begin issuing out, and when the Chromebooks arrive, we'll substitute them at that point. But in order to start school and continue with whether it's 4 weeks or 8 weeks of online instruction, we need to have some way for the students to connect. 9th through 12th grade, it's a little bit easier there. They've identified 520 devices so far. We do have 520 laptops available. 200 additional laptops are in order. And then we have an additional 500 desktops available. So at the end of the day, we'll have enough devices to begin issuing or begin instruction. It's just going to take a little bit more work on our technology department, and we have to be willing to issue the desktops that we have on hand in order to be able to connect with the students. And again, in conversations with Mr. Henge and the rest of the cabinet, we feel we can get there, but it is going to be a whole lot of work. We hope to be issuing the process for parents to start picking up the devices for the students, because as you can imagine, handing out this many devices is going to be quite taxing on the personnel and technology in the maintenance department. Now, when it comes to the connectivity, there's a whole lot that we don't know yet. The state has offered to provide money for hotspots. But a hotspot is just a little device, not much bigger than a cell phone, and you connect it into the wall, and it gets you the internet service. Our worry, however, is that once we have a whole lot of usage, how strong is that device going to be? We've started to test it, and right now it seems to work adequately. But again, we're testing 1 or 2 devices at a time versus trying to have 300 or 400 devices going on in the community at the same time. Another option, we talked to Spectrum. This would be a hardwire modem connection, but the prices are pretty high. If we go with the less costly option, it's still $115,000 a year to be able to provide connectivity to approximately 320 students. It's quite expensive. However, that assures us that regardless of who's out there connected, we'll get that connectivity. So we have to do a little bit more testing, and then we very quickly have to decide which way we're going to go with the connectivity. But again, this is something that we have to provide. We talked to the parents, and 320 plus families have indicated they don't have connectivity. So if we want to go fully online, we are required to provide it for them. We'll see what the test runs say in the next couple of days, and then we'll be bringing a recommendation to the board as to what money we're going to be recommending that we spend on that to make this happen. We have extensive planning to provide training on the Google Classroom. The administrators already trained on the 15th. We are going to have some early training for all teachers that want to participate on August 4th. Again, this is at the elementary level. That'll give them 3 weeks to be able to practice. And then during staff development, we'll have training for anybody who chose to not train on August 4th. And those that did, then they'll get additional training or more advanced training. The Canvas platform, we haven't been able to secure a training like we have with Google, but we hope to earlier than the 18th. And we also have other tentative sessions where they're going to have 50 participants at a time. So we're working with Canvas. They just haven't been as available as Google, but we're certain that we'll get there. We already have enough training planned, but we hope that we can get some more like we've been able to provide for elementary. During the week of staff development, there's just different applications that we're going to be able to provide for them. This is how we're going to train our staff. Then as far as training the parents and the students, they'll have different options, Zoom meetings, prepared videos, training links provided by Google and Canvas for the more independent learners, English and Spanish sessions, morning and afternoon sessions. We're going to make sure that there's plenty of options for parents. Once they have their devices and the connectivity, those that need it, that there's plenty of time to practice before the first day of school. Again, we're going to communicate with the parents primarily through the campus, but we'll also have it on social media and all the other venues that we have at our disposal. Now, on the protocols, each campus will have their handbook that includes a map and designates drop-off and pickup procedures, how they're going to transition between classes, procedures that they have to go to the restroom or the nurse's station, libraries, what school supplies are needed, visitor procedures if somebody has to come on campus, how we're going to serve lunch and breakfast, as well as the training schedules and all other protocols. I can tell you in advance, board members, things are going to be different. For example, I know that in the past, parents have enjoyed bringing lunch for their students or coming and eating lunch with them, but we're not going to be able to have a whole lot of that. As a matter of fact, our recommendation, like many other districts, is that none of that happens, that students bring their lunch. So there's going to be different practices. As far as parents walking their students to the classroom, kindergarten parents on the first day, we'll arrange for that by appointment, but the rest of the year, we really have to limit the hallway traffic. So there's going to be a lot of these changes that the principals will be discussing with their parents during these orientations and the review of the handbooks. Personal protective equipment, the board has asked different times what we have. This is a summary. You can see in the row above is what the Texas Education is providing for us. And then what the lower area, what we have ourselves. For example, thermometers. The Texas Education Agency provided 77 thermometers. We purchased 477 because we want to be able to take temperatures as many times a day as possible. The hand sanitizer by the gallon, TAs provide 1,100 gallons. We haven't necessarily bought them the way they're providing it, but we do have some on hand. And then you see the rest of it there. I won't go through every area, but you can see where we have plenty of masks for both students and teachers, and we'll be well covered, and definitely we'll order some more as necessary. Now, just an update, our pre-K summer school program, it served 150 students. It ended last Friday. It was very successful. Definitely gave us a lot of pointers for how we carry out the school year when our students finally show up. So congratulations to Dr. Talamantes and the pre-K staff. They did a wonderful job, and we certainly learned and videotaped some of their best practices so that we can replicate them at the other districts. The high school, the CT, early college high school, we're providing the bridge program. This is also in school instruction. We're pre-screening and doing temperature checks, face coverings, distance learning, again, everything that we're going to be practicing. That one is still going on. And then the athletic, sports performance, and band camps, those were canceled in light of everything that was happening. And again, our recommendation is that they don't resume until the week of September 14th when we return, if we do return those first 4 weeks. Mr. Mesa, members of the board, I'm sure that you have lots of questions or comments. So,
Yes, before I turn it over to board members, I just want to say that this is probably the most difficult decision that we're going to make this year. Um, we are concerned when schools stop completely that we have to shut down the school. The educational progress of the students has been lagging. We look at social, emotional, mental, nutrition, special services like dyslexia and speech. Uh, we talked about closing the gap with certain subgroups, um, and all of that has stopped. Uh, when we ask uh, Commissioner Morath about STAR testing, it's scheduled as normal. We have not heard anything whether it's going to be something that does not happen this year. We've been told that it'll continue. So things of that sort. One very important thing that teachers do is look at the total well-being of the child and report child abuse if it's necessary. Very critical things that we have to take into consideration. But I'm going to turn it over to board members for questions, and then I'll follow up with some questions that I have in my own. I'll start with Mr. Oldfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. I guess I got several, and then I'll yield and come back a little bit later on. And because this is something that the individual spoke to during public comments, I want to say thank you to Ms. Barrera for coming in and voicing her opinions and thoughts that a lot of people in the community have, a lot of teachers go in and have, because I've heard a lot of it via email and calls that I've gotten. So thank you to her for going in and being with us this evening. I know that, because I've been following it too, TEA has said the 4 weeks and then the additional 4 weeks if the school district wants the waiver, as you explained in the presentation a little bit earlier. I worry about it every day. I've been worrying about it all summer. I have 2 children that go to the school district, so it's been on my mind constantly as well. So a couple different things. When we talk about the desktops for connectivity for those that don't go in and have it, a lot of the stuff, particularly higher elementary, so I guess second on up, and then middle school to high school, a bunch of that will probably be done via Zoom or Teams, integrated into the either Google platform or the Canvas platform. So we talk about the desktops. Are we going to be adding webcams to those desktops as well? Because there would be that need for the back and forth, as essentially the way TEA is laying out how it would go in and be. So that'd be one question that I have. I don't know if you could answer that real quick before I move on.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We've already ordered plenty of webcams to be able to provide those desktops with them. Now, as soon as the Chromebook get here, they're already fitted with the webcams.
Right. Okay. And then I know that if we eventually get to that point of having to come face to face, later on in the school year, perhaps in the next coming weeks, the district works on a facts page, a frequently asked questions page, and glean a lot of stuff from social media that I see on the different feeds about reopening, because teachers are expressing stuff, parents are expressing stuff. As an example, one would be when the students have to go to the restroom and all that. Will it be one of those things that instead of, okay, student goes to the restroom like we would normally do during the school year, and then they would come back, is it going to be something where we're going to have breaks during the day where the teachers are going to accompany, ensure that they're washing their hands and using the sanitizer, different things like that. I think it would be cool. It would be a good idea to have a facts page that we could put on the website and in social media, because I know that's something we're doing at the college. So that's a thought there. And just check my notes real quick.
Well, I guess while you check your notes, Mr. Overfelt, all of those topics are discussed in the individual handbook that the campuses have designed for each one of their campuses. And this handbook is not the regular student handbook or parent handbook that we issue out. This handbook is just specifically to deal with the COVID crisis, and it addresses all those areas. I would say that the handbook is probably 95% complete. The principals are just waiting for any updates that we provide here so that they can start pushing it out to the parents. But that they've done a tremendous job and are just about ready to issue that out.
Okay. And the last two things, I'm sure it will be addressed during teacher in service when we get to that point here down the road, as far as arrival times for teachers and when they're allowed to leave for when we're actually on campus and stuff like that. I imagine that will be addressed. And then the last thing I'm going to say on this is, I know we want to do 3 weeks and use the 4th week as a transition there. I, as a parent, and as a citizen and as a board member who represents the 10,500 students in this district, would like to see us use the full 8 and utilize week 8 as the transition back in, if at that point we're able to. I know things change daily. Any of us following the numbers in Del Rio know that it's changing and daily, as was mentioned earlier by our speaker, and we've seen it on the news. The U.S. Navy dispatched a strike team to Del Rio to help with everything. So I would really like to see go the 4 weeks, and then the board ask for a TEA waiver for an additional 4 and try and stay out 8 weeks to just flatten to try and help keep the curve flat, and then see where we are at the end of the 8 weeks. So that's my opinion. I wanted it out there and known. Mr. Mesa, I yield back to you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith?
Mr. Rios had some final comments.
I wanted to take advantage of a comment that Mr. Overfelt made just to share this with everyone. And again, the handbook that we are going to put out is going to describe some of these questions. But in the past, the campuses have been open to working with parents to receive the students as early as the parents are dropping them off. And we know that parents are dropping them off because they had to get to work. In the plan for this school year, when students are dropped off, they walk straight to the classroom because we cannot have them congregating in playgrounds unsupervised or in cafeterias. So then we can't have parents dropping them off any earlier than 7:30 because teachers will be asked to report to work at 7:20 in the morning so that they can get to the classroom and start supervising kids as they're being dropped off. Anyway, again, parents, to parents that are watching, there are going to be things that are different for those that choose to come to school every day, but that's just the whole community hopefully coming together to address some of these issues, and that'll definitely be one of them. And Mr. Overfelt, in terms of the 8 weeks, the 4 weeks versus the 8 weeks, administration is going to be ready to make that recommendation when the time comes, if necessary. we will make sure that we keep track of the data. We'll make sure that we have parent focus groups as required by law. We'll make sure that all that is ready. It's just we're not allowed to just recommend already 8 weeks, because that's not the way the rules are set up. Now the media doesn't do any favors to anybody who's working hard to organize this, because they mislead people into thinking that we have that 8-week option. We don't have that 8-week option. We have the 4-week option. But as soon as that becomes a need, then absolutely we'll be way ahead of the plan and be able to make that recommendation immediately.
Right, and I understand that the 4 weeks. I'm just expressing that when we get to that point, I wanted my fellow board members and the public to know that I would support going another 4 weeks. That's just the point I was trying to make. But yes, I understand how TEA has it laid out. Mr. Mesa.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith?
Well, you and administration have spent a tremendous amount of time trying to determine what to do and what's the right recommendation to make. And so I know your heart's in the right place, and the administration is. I will say that just from my personal, this is more of a personal note, I must be the 7% that did not get a call. So you can just mark me down to the 3152. You can change that to 3153 because I want my child to go to face-to-face call. That said, the putting together the protocols to make that happen is a daunting task. I don't know what you've done, what committees you've put together, what oversight you've done there. Can you allude to that here in a minute so that I kind of understand what that is? And if it's not done, I would volunteer myself and some time to help prepare that. Part of those protocols might be when you're looking at students that have issues that you may not want to have in the class, right? That there might be inherent risks, asthmatic students, or maybe those kind of type persons that might, if they contracted the disease, might be in a worse situation. We may want to understand how to put some different protocols in just for those kids, right? To add more layers of protection. If you, it sounds like that there's a lot of drive to go to a continuous online type support. And I just don't support that. I think that if we got to a long-term strategy tied to that, we'd have to go study what our needs are from a teacher and staffing standpoint. I don't know that they would be the same because the model is so different. How do you go and manage that? Would be a different way to manage it. And I don't know if that's a plus or minus equation. And if we have the cash to manage it, it's a plus. And then obviously there'd be a surplus if it's a minus. So on and so forth. So anyway, I think those protocols are a critical point that I'd like to get some more insight from you.
Yes, sir. If I may, Mr. Mesa, there was different groups that have contributed to the discussion since last March. There's also other districts that have already put out their handbooks that we borrowed from. But I think that there's a lot of wisdom, and I appreciate you mentioning that. Perhaps we should have a focus group to review the handbook that is already there and see particularly what a lot of the parents would suggest is added. I will work with our administration to put a focus group together to review that before board time comes to release it, we can do that in short order. So thank you for that.
Yeah, to me, that's the most critical thing in managing that face-to-face classroom setting. How do you get kids to class? What does the bus look like? How do you check kids as they're getting on the bus, and when they get to campus, how to manage them as they channel their way through the hallways and so on and so forth. So I know y'all have already got a lot of work done to it, but it is having that face-to-face environment and interaction with peers and teachers is such a critical part of what our job is at the time. I want to get us through as fast as we possibly can and safe.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We have Diana Gonzalez.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's because I can barely hear myself, so. I have some questions, sir. The lady that was Miss Erica, and asking about the special needs, the life skills. How are they going to be taught online?
Yes, ma'am. We've, through the special education department, we've also reached out to the parents to see who wants online and who wants to come face to face. There is a platform that's specially designed to help service some of the students at home with special needs. In all likelihood, parents who have students who, whether they need physical therapy or whatever, there's things that we can't do online, then they would be asked to come to school in a hybrid model. And we would definitely provide transportation. So if a student needed some kind of physical therapy, we'd go pick them up at different times of the day to bring them to school to give them that therapy, and then send them back. But for everything else, we would provide the remote instruction. It just depends on the needs of the student. And for every student, every plan has to be individualized. We've also looked, for those that are gonna come in, we've looked at what additional classrooms we can designate in the campus so that there isn't too much clutter in the rooms and they can social distance in a better way. But for the most part, it is going to be an individualized plan.
So such as like the one at the Cardwell, I believe they have 30 students, so you're going to have 3 classrooms with 10 students each. Is that how it's going to work?
Well, you know, depending on the needs of the child, it could be even less than that. Because you have a child and then they might have a one-to-one. So it's just going to vary for the needs of every child. But it could be some online, it could be some hybrid model depending on their needs. But I guarantee you that that'll be even more planned out than everybody else because of the individual plan.
Because they said, you're saying 3 weeks of online, that's what they're wondering, the parents. How's that going to happen? So it's going to be depending on what the subject is that what you're saying?
On the needs of the child, mainly.
Oh, okay. That also includes pre-K?
That includes everybody, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Pre-K people too. Because I know pre-K, they did it over the summer online. Also, during the staff development, you're going to have safety measures and precautions and everything that they need to follow when school starts?
Yes, ma'am. There's 2 handbooks that are being developed to deal with COVID. One is for the parents and the students, and then the other one is for the staff. And our HR department is developing that. As part of the those 7 days before school starts, we'll provide obviously staff development on the online models, but we're also going to provide a planning day on all the procedures on the campus, so that the principals can share in very detailed fashion all the nuances of how the school's going to operate. So that is already part of it, ma'am.
Okay. What about a non-teacher that's a paraprofessional? What are they going to do during this online, 3 weeks online?
You know, that is a plan that's in process right now. That's one answer that we don't have an assignment for everybody yet. I will tell you that because we don't know, we're not filling all those vacancies right now. We have a whole lot of vacancies in the instructional aid department, but we haven't filled them. Again, we just have not been able to get to that plan yet. We did talk about not having substitute teachers because it's just, there's a lot of unknowns. We know a lot of our substitute teachers, but then there's a lot of them that we don't, and then having to teach them the electronic platform is difficult. So we talked about how we would use personnel already on campus to cover classes. Again, these are just plans, but as we get over some of these hurdles, we're able to be more inclusive in the planning. So we'll have some of those answers. I just don't have the one about the aides yet, ma'am.
Okay. And also the surveys were taken before the surge. So there are some parents that have changed their mind. I'm sure you considered that also. But so to me also, I was hoping also we could make it longer than 3 weeks. So 4 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever. I would be more comfortable also in that area as we, 4 weeks on 8 weeks. I agree with Mr. Overfelt. That's how I feel comfortable about it. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. I go to Mr. Contreras.
Hey, Dr. Rios, members of the board, just a few comments and a few concerns. My biggest concerns is for the special ed department for those that are severely handicapped, where you're going to have to change the child. What if the parent decides to send these children, these students, and they're severely handicapped, and you got to change them? How are we going to protect those employees? You know, I mean, because you got a close contact. That's one. And then two, it just seems like, again, kind of just agreeing with Mr. Overfeld and Ms. Gonzalez, you know, as far as the 3 weeks and the 4 and if possible make the 5th the transition. If we could do that, you know, and having said that, I kind of feel bad because there is a lot of parents, and I know I've had a lot of calls for those parents that do want to send their children. And so for the parents and the teachers and staff out there, I mean, it's a tough situation for us because there's really not regardless of what decisions we make, I don't think there's going to be a one that fits just one particular group, whether it's the parents that we send them that don't want to send them, and then the parents that do want to send them. It's going to be tough, but Dr. Rios, if you can answer those questions, how would we address them?
Mr. Contreras, in terms of the teachers in the life skills or the personnel in the life skills rooms, Dr. Aguirre was asked, and she took care of it, and she already received a lot of the equipment. They will have
questions,
more protective equipment, bigger face shields, gloves, gowns, a whole lot of protective devices, pretty much similar to what a nurse would wear if they were working in a COVID unit at a hospital. So that's been taken care of, and I appreciate Dr. Aguirre and her department's efforts in doing that. In terms of responding to parents, we've had a significant number of communication, parents that want to send the kids to school right away. They've expressed their concerns to us. And it is difficult because on the one hand, a lot of school districts in the state are choosing to start as normal and not go fully online. But a whole lot more are. And what I've communicated to the parents that do want to start as soon as possible is that, you know, we're not going to be quick to jump into the second 8 weeks and just say that we need to do it because we're going to do it. We're going to research it, and we're going to hear from the local health authority and look at the statistics and be careful in how we make recommendations to the board. But that right now, the prudent thing to do is to delay the start of school by 2 weeks and then go at least 3 weeks of fully online and 1 week of transition. We cannot do the 5th week of transition because anytime you go over the 4th week, you have to, all that other paperwork applies for the waivers and everything else. So we did consider that option by using the 5th week as transition, but that is not allowed. Otherwise, we would have definitely done that.
One last, and just to propose, kind of like what Mr. Smith said, I would like to propose and I like the idea about the focus group, but only for the board members for them to propose or suggest one representative out of each board member and deal with it. That way you keep the focus group small and by the board, have a representative by the board member and we go from there. I mean, I think from this point on, I think it's something prudent that we should be doing moving forward with current situation with COVID that seems like no end.
Thank you, Mr. Contreras. I'll go to Amy Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. I want to go back to the technology part of having the computers, the desktops in the household, which I think is great. What you said, you're going to have all this stuff prepared and directions for the parents to install, but sometimes we're not that tech savvy. So will there be a number for us to be able to call and get a hold of some extra help to get this done?
Absolutely, absolutely, ma'am. We've talked to our technology department, and they will organize not only for the connection, but throughout the whole year, they will have a helpline for anybody to call during the day if they are experiencing any problems with connectivity or any computer issues. So it's not going to be a 24/7, but it'll be definitely throughout the instructional day and even into hours after school where there will be assistance. Not only up front to connect, but even throughout the school year.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And then my other, I guess it's not a question, but I also agree with Mr. Overfeld, Ms. Gonzalez, that because I do email you, Dr. Rios, with concerns, and that's my concern, that we push that out if we have to, as long as possible, and that we also be transparent with our community and the moves that we make. We have to be transparent during this time. I mean, it's a lot of stuff out there that is not good, that's being said, like Josh said. We have to be transparent. We have to take accountability for ourselves as a board and be transparent as possible during this time. It's a serious time, and I trusting that we'll be as transparent as we can for the community. And also with those, with the focus group, how about we involve some teachers as well? Is that possible?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the principals did visit with some teachers, but I think that it's important to have teachers and parents together in the focus group so that there can be a balanced approach and it can go from what's on paper to actually what can be implemented.
Right.
So I'll make a recommendation here in a little bit about what the focus group would consist of, and then y'all let me know if you think that's appropriate. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mesa.
Thank you, Amy. Mrs. Webb?
Yes, sir. Thank you. In reference to the focus groups, what I was thinking was also, first of all, thank you, Mr. Smith, for bringing that up. But I was focusing on including some medical professionals in that group. We all have district nurses. We have probably a lead district nurse that needs to be in there because of the fact that how are we going to identify the students if they are tested positive or if they have a fever? Who's going to walk them to the nurse's office? Who's going to do what? And I'm sure that that's probably already in your protocol, I'm assuming. And if not, it would be nice to have some medical professionals in that focus group as well. The other concern that I was thinking with online classes, I know that a lot of our parents are having to return back to work. And sometimes they might have a second grader, third grader, but there's nobody there at the house that can be with them when they open up their online classes. So is the district looking at some flexibility in their schedules for online classes? Or is there going to be a set time that classes will be conducted online by the teachers? And then one last comment, I just want to commend Dr. Aguirre for taking care of those students that work with the severely handicapped students, especially like the ones at Calderon. Thank you very much, Dr. Aguirre. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sorry.
As well, there will be flexibility for students in K through second grade. They'll have a longer day to complete their hours of instruction because it's going to be asynchronous. It's not going to be face-to-face. So they can't complete their hours of instruction at any point during the day, probably as late as 5, 6 o'clock. And we'll make that determination as we get closer and we finalize the plans. And these plans will be presented to the board before we submit them. So yes, there will be some flexibility in those grade levels. Also, the board president suggested that we reach out to a lot of the housing apartments type and see if they have a room where we can provide an instructional aid to monitor the students while they get online. So unfortunately, we haven't had a positive response for that yet. Hasn't been a negative response, just nobody's been able to commit to it. But we'll keep looking at it to see if we can provide some flexibility for the 3rd through 5th grade kids that might need some help. So we're working on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reyes. And I just want to give, my discussion on all this is that the decision is going to fall on us. We have top officials that said that school is going to open. I am a science believer. I am a science major. When I was going through my credentials in regard to mid-management, I remember one of my professors saying 70% of the decisions you're going to make as the campus principal is going to be based on good common sense. Good common sense is telling us that we're not ready to start school. There are a lot of things that have to be in place. I started thinking, for example, of medical grade masks, especially for those that are immune system compromised. The life skills, do we have mentioned gowns? Do we have shoe coverings? And I know what it means to work in life skills. They go through a lot. These students are not going to warn you that all of a sudden, they're going to either be sick and body fluids flying all over the place. The heavy cleaning, sanitizing that needs to take place as far as needed assistance with custodial services. The policy regarding teachers getting affected. I don't want for them to use their own private days if they, all of a sudden are stressed with being tested positive. The face shields, especially life skills again. And there's so many other things that come into play, but I would not, I saw that these masks are going to be reusable. I don't know how they can be decontaminated, but I sure would like to ask for medical grade masks like the N95 mask that nurses wear. But I still have lots of questions in regard to, again, having total online. I'm all for it. And I also express the fact that I'm data driven. If the numbers haven't gone down, I certainly would like to ask for an extension to continue online and not face to face. But that would be a decision that I would come to a conclusion after looking at data, looking at numbers. Cases are going up, the charts are like crazy. I no way going to say we're going to have face-to-face, immediately until the numbers indicate that it is going to it reached the peak and is slowing down. So all of those are factors, but I also, again, as I mentioned in my beginning, it's important that teachers do such a tremendous job. I don't want these students severely affected with um, their educational progress or mental state. Um, if there's child abuse at home, the reporting, all those factors. But I'm also very concerned for the safety of the teachers. So my decisions are going to be data driven. If at the point of once we get ready after the online instruction that they're going to be face-to-face instruction, I will make my decision at that point. When I look at the data, if I'm going to extend, it will be based on information received. And I also want to applaud the questions Mrs. Webb and everybody else asked, but I would also like to see where the school nurse takes an active role in the discussions, possibly at the principal's meetings in regard to cases and family members that are affected. Sometimes they have valuable information, especially for this time that we're going through this pandemic. Nurses from each campus have a viable role during this time to report known cases of family members, or sometimes the state of the campus in regard to infections. With all that being said, again, all of us are in a position to protect our teachers and our employees, not only teachers, employees, but when you think of cafeteria and you think of bus drivers, and I'm glad that we have the summer program. I hear comments from teachers that they were not able to keep their mask on and they cough and they sneeze, and they're not going to tell you I'm going to sneeze, or it just happens with these young ones. But I think the employees expressed a sense of it was scary. It was scary. Even it was to a small number of students. I can imagine when we bring the whole campus together. And that's my discussion. Ms. Overfeld had a question.
Yeah, just a real quick question, because it was something that you talked about when we talked about cafeteria, when you talked about cafeteria and all that. When we start these 4 weeks with the transition week built in there in the beginning, are we going to go in and do the same like we did when we had to shut down after, where we're going to have the meals delivered to different areas, since we will be online for those first 3.5 weeks or so? Do we need to get permission from Texas, from Sid Miller's office and stuff like that in order to continue doing that?
If I may, Mr. Mesa, Mr. Overfeld, the Texas Department of Agriculture has already given their decision on all that. They've extended our permit to deliver meals the way we've been doing them through the summer, just through the end of August. Once the school year starts, which would include most of the remote instruction period, we can continue to hand out meals, but at that point, there has to be strict accountability meal by meal. That means that there's a barcode that has to be scanned, or a student's name that has to be checked off and reconciled. What we intend to do at that point, at least so far, is to designate elementary campuses in each neighborhood where parents can drive up with whatever type of student ID we provide them, whether it's a letter with a barcode for each child, and they can pick up meals. So for example, in the north side of town, we would, between Buena Vista and Lonnie Green, we would probably designate Lonnie Green. And then for the whole area serving where Del Rio Middle School is and Calderon is, we'd probably go to Calderon. Then and then for Chavira and Lamar, we'd probably go to Lamar. And so we'd identify certain places where parents would drive through and have their student ID scanned and provide meals at that time. But it would not be where we dispatch different buses to different neighborhoods. They won't allow for that to continue.
Okay, as long as we're able to provide food in some shape or fashion, because we do know that hunger is a problem in our town. So as long as we're still able to at least get the meals to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orfeld. Dr. Rios, just one question in general. I mentioned the nurses, for example. Do we have a medical person in charge of the nurses?
No, Mr. Mesa, we have a lead nurse that helps us. And then we have Sandra Hernandez, who supervises the nurses from the operational point of view. And then we have Laura English that assists in the ordering of supplies for them. But it would only be the lead nurse.
Would it be possible for the lead nurse to provide information on a weekly basis from the campus?
We have
the lead nurse be able to get in touch with the campus nurse and have a report?
Well, the lead nurse is a campus nurse, so they definitely have the regular duties that another nurse would have. But we are exploring I guess I want to call it software, a tracing software that would generate those reports. Ms. Hernandez and myself have a conference call tomorrow to look at that so that we can generate numbers and even contact should a student or an employee, and it does involve the nurse providing that or feeding that data into the system. So we're definitely looking at how we're going to be able to provide the data and keep track of it. And hopefully within the next 3 weeks, we'll have a recommendation. So it'll definitely involve the nurse. We just don't know the platform yet. Because they're going to have their hands full on the campus, we want to make sure that we do it as easy as possible for them. So we look to have a demonstration here real soon.
Just asking that the nurse be given a vital role in dealing with this pandemic, especially at their campus.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Mrs. Webb?
I think you alluded to it a little bit when mentioning the head nurse, because my comment was going to be, do we have a health advisory board? In other words, does the lead nurse meet on a regular basis, or will she be or he be meeting on a regular basis with the other nurses on the other campuses, so that all of them are in contact with what's going on the campuses? And then the other question is, will all the students within the district have ID badges, since all of them will be required to wear masks once they're on campus and once we get to that point?
We had not thought about ID badges, but we'll certainly look at how we could get some of those done for everybody.
Well, my question, and the reason I asked that question is everybody will be wearing a mask, and it's very difficult to identify who's who when they have one half of their face covered. So it would be easier to be able to tell who by identifying your badge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez, one more.
Just one last thing, and I don't know if it would be possible just to track the district, Dr. Rios and Mr. Mesa, but you know, on your weekly update, if we could have kind of like a weekly update on any positives that might surge within the school district, that, you know, teachers within we don't want to know the names. However, just for data, so we can keep track, hey, you know, we had a teacher come out at this school, turn positive. We don't want to know names, just so we can keep and have a feel what's going on. I mean, I think it would be beneficial for us to make some decisions later on moving forward also. And you could just include it in the update.
Yes, sir. We'll have that data because as students and adults become positive, the health authority would be notifying us or the individual themselves. And we'll visit with the attorney just to make sure that we're clear, even though we're not providing names, what data we're able to provide. So absolutely.
That's one item, Mr. Contreras, that I had asked Dr. Rios that sooner or later we need to have a number regarding employees. I thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to the next item. The next report that we have is item B, 8B, land acquisition for new elementary update. Dr. Rios?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Meza. Again, we have another presentation that I'll be sharing with you. It's a short presentation. Mr. Mesa, members of the board, wanted to take this opportunity to provide an update as to how the purchase of the new land is going. As I indicated last month, we did enter into a contract with Mr. Justin Burke to purchase some acreage just northeast of the water towers there on Agarita Street. It's the property that where Green Valley, for those of you that are familiar with that neighborhood, Green Valley, if you're traveling east on Green Valley, it's where it dead ends. That's the property. It's right there in the middle of that development. So now what we have to do is we have to close on the property. In discussing with our attorney, some of the areas or items that they wanted answers to were the title commitment, the survey, due diligence, what work the seller was going to do, what type of closing documents were required, financing, annexation, and plat approval. Some of these don't apply, but that's the checkoff list that they provided to us as we were beginning the negotiations with the seller. Title commitment, it has been received, so that's checked off the policy, the survey. The preliminary survey was completed on June 10th by Mr. Abner Martinez. The survey does need to be updated and certified to the district and title company. That's fairly simple. Due diligence, we did complete a phase 1 environmental report. The report is complete, there's nothing negative there. The geotech report was also completed by Carrillo and Associates. There were no voids or caverns. Utilities report, we did work with the city on the onset, and everything was determined that there was enough water and drainage. As a matter of fact, in this property that we're buying, it butts up right to the property. The only issue, and that's why it's in red, is the appraisal. The commercial appraiser that had been working for the district in the past declared a conflict of interest because of their close friendship with the seller. So the Mr. Hector Chapa, our construction manager, will be reaching out to one of the local appraisers to see if they can complete that. So hopefully that one will be tomorrow, but that really is the only item that's pending to say it's in progress and it'll get done. Plans and specifications, ERO is taking care of that, but that's not until after the purchase when they submit their construction documents. Permits, again, the contract will be doing that. Seller's work, that's rock pile, but that's until after the closing. They have 90 days to finish the roads. They've already got curves in some of those areas, so they're making progress. Closing documents, we decided that our attorney was going to complete them, and there is no financing. Annexation, that'll happen afterwards. We'll do a voluntary annexation. We'll pose that to the city. And same thing with the plat approval. That can be completed simultaneously. But again, these items won't be done until the beginning of construction. So in short, the only item that we haven't been able to check off is the appraisal. And we hope that tomorrow one of the local companies will be able to take care of that for us. Mr. Chapa has preliminarily done a study of how many lots would fit in the acreage that we're buying and the cost of each lot. And that equals very close to the acreage or the price that we're paying for the acreage. So this shouldn't be a problem, but still we got to have a qualified person tell us that. But in short, we will be able to close approximately 1 week after the appraisal is completed. The issue is getting the appraiser to do it. So hopefully we'll have an update to provide Friday as to a projected date for closing. Are there any questions, Mr. Mesa?
I have a question, and then I'll turn it over to other board members. I know I've asked this question before, Dr. Rios, and it has to do with the pipeline for connections to water, because it's a residential area. We do not have any commercial or big buildings in that area. And my experience has been that with the land acquisition, when Del Rio Middle School went into construction, total changes had to be made because there were 2 schools and the pipeline had to be doubled in size. And so, again, my question is regarding the water supply to the new school. If, again, it has to be increased, is there going to be a very long distance involved with the connection point to the exact location?
No, Mr. Mesa, that won't be a need because, again, we visited with the city ahead of time before we even entered into discussions or negotiations, and they indicated to us that the pipes that were there were sufficient for the type of water that we were going to draw. That's that initial work that Mr. Martinez did for us. He presented the amount of, or the projected amount of gallons that every student would use per day and teachers, and we told the city, this is what we think the amount of water that we're going to need. And of course, we erred by overestimating, and they indicated that the pipe that was there was sufficient. At that meeting, we were all present, including the city manager, so we appreciate their cooperation. And then the pipe that is there now is right adjacent to the property we're buying. It's on the side of the easement of the developer. So it's really close. And they have indicated that it's of sufficient width.
Okay, and again, based on my recognition, I guess the fact was it was a fire marshal that got involved in regard to that decision, because of, in case, you know, that the school caught on fire, there was ample pressure to be able to make sure that, you know, they have enough water for both usage and also in case of a fire. But I guess that will not come into play until inspection time.
Yes, sir. Now, in terms of the size of the pipe that goes from the actual line that we're going to tap into to the school, there might be some issue there with the width, but again, that's something that will be approved once the plan is submitted. At any rate, rest assured that I will have Mr. Chapa double check everything, both with Mr. Abner Martinez and again with the city, just to make sure that we don't leave any stone unturned.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions from board members. Anyone else? No questions? I guess we're good. Okay, thank you. Next item we have is the consent agenda. There are some minutes to some meetings. The meeting of June 15, 2020. There's some financial statements, some bids, donations, and other purchases. If you would like any item pulled out or have a question, you can do so. In the meantime, I'm going to just, we're not going to read the donations. We will post them online. but I'd like to make a statement again, thanking those individuals and businesses that contributed to donating items to our district. We are very pleased that we were able to donate to the different programs and different campuses, and we thank you in those efforts. Again, these donations will be posted online. And we are not going to read item by item, but is there any item from the consent agenda that you would like to either question or have pulled out and vote on it separate? In one action, we'll approve all items on the consent agenda. Any one item? We're all good? Okay, then I will entertain a motion that we approve the consent agenda. Motion by Mr. Contreras, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor, Mr. Contreras? In favor, myself in favor, Diana Gonzalez. In favor, Mrs. Webb. In favor, Amy Haynes. In favor, Ken Smith. In favor, and Ms. Orfeld. Motion is approved. Consent agenda is approved. We go on to administration, item 10A. Consideration to approve the order of election for the school district trustee elections to be held on November 3rd, 2020. Sandra Hernandez.
Could you hear me? I got started without unmuting. Good evening, everyone, once again. On March 18, 2020, Governor Abbott issued a proclamation authorizing political subdivisions, including school districts, holding elections on May the 2nd, 2020, to postpone those elections to the November 3rd uniform election date in the interest of preserving public health and safety in light of COVID-19. On March the 31st, the Board of Trustees approved the order of postponement of the San Felipe Del Rio's Consolidated Independent School District Board of Trustees election to the November 3rd, 2020 uniform election date. In compliance with the election code, the Board of Trustees of the San Felipe Del Rio Consolidated Independent School District must approve an order of election establishing the procedure for filing and conducting said election. The last day to order a general election is Monday, August 17, 2020. This is why we're here this evening. School board elections will be held on Tuesday, November the 3rd for the following positions. Place 2, currently held by Mr. Joshua D. Overfelt. Place 6, currently held by Ms. Diana Gonzalez. And place 7, currently held by Ms. Amy Haynes. The district will participate in a joint election as required by Section 11.0581 of the Texas Education Code and will comply with the requirement of using county election precincts on election day per Section 42.002 of the Election Code. Early voting by personal appearance will begin on Monday, October the 19th, 2020, and end on Friday, October the 30th, 2020 at the Del Rio Civic Center. Polling locations on election day are at county election precincts. And at this time, we're waiting on the on any orders from the Secretary of State or the governor for any additional changes. To meet the compliance with Senate Bill 2, recently adopted by the 86th legislature, the school board election information has been posted on the 2020 school board election webpage on the school district's website. Election information will be updated on a regular basis as new information becomes available. Are there any questions with regard to the order of election?
Questions, board members? And this is an action item, and there is a document that we all have to approve, so no questions, Sandra.
Thank you, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the order of election for the school district elections to be held on Tuesday, November the 4th, 2020.
Heard the recommendation from administration. Is there a motion? Mr. Overfeld, is there a second? Amy Haynes, all those in favor, please indicate. Mr. Contreras? Yes. Myself? Yes. Diana Gonzalez? Yes. Mr. Webb? In favor. Amy Haynes? In favor. Mr. Ken Smith? In favor. Mr. Overfeld? Motion is approved unanimously with 7 votes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, when I tell board members, please don't leave after the meeting. We have to sign that order of election. Thank you, Sandra.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We'll go on to item 10B, consideration to approve an interlocal cooperation agreement by and between San Felipe del CISD and the County of Val Verde in the estimated amount of $58,000. Funding source, general funds for COVID-19 contact tracers. Sandra Hernandez.
Yes, sir. Good evening. The purpose of this interlocal cooperation agreement is to provide necessary contact tracing services to the residents of Del Rio, Val Verde County, Texas, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. In this agreement, the district will approve the salaries of 2 contact tracers. The county will hire them, train them, and provide space and equipment to prioritize contact tracing for school district personnel and students affected with COVID-19. The district proposes the salary for each contract tracer not to exceed $29,000 per year.
Questions? Mr. Overfeld?
I read the document there, and I just want to be clear or get reassurances from Dr. Rios, because I'm sure you've talked with our county judge. In the document, it says that those 2 tracers, while school is in session, will be devoted strictly to San Felipe Del Rio Consolidated Independent School District. And when we're not in session, they will be able to be tasked to do other things in the county, tracing other stuff. But while school is in session, they are essentially tracking any cases that might pop up or will pop up with our teachers, staff, and students. That is correct, yes?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Overfeld. Mr. Contreras?
Basically, it was the same question as Mr. Overfeld, you know, and then I also wanted to ask is the city doing something similar, or is just us with the county?
No, sir. As a matter of fact, Mr. Mesa and I were at a meeting a few weeks ago where the issue was brought up, and it was brought up because the city was doing it. So we're following their example to help out with the county, because it is a whole lot and there aren't enough tracers to take care of it. So yeah, the city's doing it also.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Contreras.
All right, I'll read the recommendation.
Yes, no other questions, yes.
It is a recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the interlocal cooperation agreement by and between San Felipe Del Rio Consolidated Independent School District and the County of Val Verde in the estimated amount of $58,000. The funding source is general funds for COVID-19 contract tracers.
We've heard the recommendation from administration. Is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Ms. Gonzalez, seconded by Mr. Contreras. All those in favor? Mr. Contreras? In favor. Myself in favor. Diana Gonzalez in favor. Mrs. Webb in favor. Amy Haynes in favor. Mr. Ken Smith in favor. And Joshua Overfeld in favor. Motion carries unanimously with 7 votes. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
We go on to item 11, curriculum and instruction. Consideration to approve instructional materials allotment and TEKS Certification form for the 2020-2021 school year. Items.
Thank you. Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. Each year, we come before you with the same request. It's a requirement for the instructional materials allotment. Legislation from the 82nd Texas Legislature in 2011 created an instructional materials allotment for the purchase of instructional materials, technology equipment, and technology-related services. This instructional materials allotment is a combination now. We used to get a separate fund for textbooks from the state, and then we would get the technology. Now it's a combined allotment. One of the requirements under the Texas Education Code 28.002 is that the district superintendent, along with the president and the secretary of the Board of Trustees, complete the IMA certification form in addition to the actions taken as part of the instructional materials adoption process. The certification form is attached for your review, and I will just note that every purchase we make goes through them first. It has to be approved, and then we make the purchase. Are there any questions?
Questions, board members? No questions.
Third is the recommendation of the administration of the Board of Trustees approves the district instructional materials allotment and TEAC certification form and gives approval for the superintendent, board president, and board secretary to sign the form.
You heard the recommendation from administration. I will entertain a motion for approval. Motion made by Mr. Overfeld, seconded by Mr. Ken Smith. All those in favor, Mr. Contreras? In favor, myself in favor, Diana Gonzalez. In favor, Mrs. Webb. In favor, Amy Haynes. In favor, Mr. Ken Smith. In favor, Mr. Overfeld. In favor. Motion carries by 7 unanimous votes.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa.
Thank you. Go to item 11B. Consideration to approve an agreement between Southwest Texas Junior College and San Felipe CISD for career and technical education, CTE dual credit courses. Item 1.
President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This MOU is between Southwest Texas Junior College, and it includes two different memorandums of understanding. One is the dual credit technical program, and the other one is just the workforce trainings development decisions. So the memorandum of understanding is for the operational plan of delivery for dual credit technical courses offered at Del Rio High School for the students during the 2020 and 2021 school year. There had been discussion that it would be part of a larger MOU, but at this point in time, it is a separate memorandum of understanding. They are attached for your review, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Questions from board members? I hear no questions.
Mr. Mesa, it is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the superintendent of schools to sign the MOU agreement with Southwest Texas Junior College as presented.
You heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval? Ms. Diana Gonzalez, seconded by Mr. Contreras. All those in favor, Mr. Contreras? Or myself, or Diana Gonzalez? Or Mrs. Webb? For and Amy Haynes, and Mr. Ken Smith, and Mr. Overfield. Motion carries 4. Okay. 7 votes. Motion carries unanimously. Next item we have is 11C, consideration to approve update to new course in career and technical education, CTE, cybersecurity offered at Del Rio High School. Item 1.
Thank you, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. On December 16, 2019, we presented a new cybersecurity program of study for our Del Rio High School students in correlation with our CTE program, which you approved. Since then, we have learned, we've got more information from Project Lead the Way, and we have learned that there is a very similar course to replace the forensic science that would be entitled AP Computer Science A. This similar course meets the same TEKS requirements, but the big advantage is that by taking computer science principles and computer science A in concurrent years, that qualifies the students for their foreign language credit of something of a language other than English. So right now, students have to take these courses and they would have to earn their Spanish credit or their French credit, but by substituting the forensic science now with the computer science AP course back-to-back years, they would earn their credit for a language other than English because it is considered a language. So we are coming before you currently to ask that you consider for us to make the swap in the courses from forensic science in their junior year to AP computer science A.
I have a question. Were we not talking about cybersecurity?
Yes, sir. So when we're talking about cybersecurity, there's 4 courses. Their freshman year, they take fundamentals of computer science. Their sophomore year, they take AP computer science principles. Their third year as a junior, they would take AP computer science A. And then their senior year, they would do their project-based research. And again, in speaking with Mr. Gonzalez, the actual curriculum, except for the title, is very similar, Mr. Mesa, but it is a cybersecurity pathway.
I kind of got sidetracked with foreign language.
Yes.
I was just going to clarify, Mr. Mesa, the board has already approved the cybersecurity pathway. We're just approving changes in the required courses to complete that pathway.
Okay, just question. I think Amy had a question also. No? Anyone else? We're good? Okay, recommendation, please.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve a new course, AP Computer Science A, available to Del Rio High School students as presented.
With the recommendation from the administration, is there a motion for approval? Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Mr. Ken Smith. All those in favor, Mr. Contreras? In favor, myself in favor, Diana Gonzalez? In favor, Mrs. Webb? In favor, Amy Haynes? In favor, Mr. Ken Smith? In favor, Mr. Joshua Overfelt? In favor. Motion carries by 7 unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa and board
Thank you.
members.
Go on to item 14, human resources. Item 14A, consideration to approve employee job descriptions and evaluation forms. Network specialist, update. Fiber network technician, update. Aide Garcia.
Yes, good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. In your board packet, we included a job description and evaluation for the network specialist and fiber network technician. These positions were improperly classified as exempt and should be classified as non-exempt. This completes the classification review for all paraprofessional positions. Any questions?
Questions from board members? No questions. I will ask for you to read the recommendation.
Okay, recommendation. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the job description and evaluations forms as discussed.
Reflect the recommendation from administration. Is there a motion for approval? Mr. Ken Smith, is there a second? Amy Haynes, all those in favor, Mr. Contreras, in favor, myself in favor, Diana Gonzalez, in favor, Ms. Linda Webb, in favor, Amy Haynes, in favor, Mr. Ken Smith, in favor, Mr. Joshua Orfeld, in favor, 7 votes. Motion carries unanimously. We go on to item 14B, consideration to approve the second observation appraisal listing. Aide Garcia.
Yes, board policy DNA legal states that a teacher may request a second appraisal by another certified appraiser. A district shall adopt written procedures for determining the selection of the second appraiser. The procedures shall be disseminated to each teacher at the time of employment and updated annually. With this memo, we are listing the second appraisers or additional appraisers. We have the campus administrator at the same campus, or a campus administrator from another campus, or a district administrator from the following list, which would be the chief instructional officer, the director of special education, and the director of bilingual and ESL education.
Questions from board members? No questions. Recommendation, please.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the second observation appraiser list as discussed.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Mr. Ken Smith. All those in favor? Mr. Contreras, in favor. Myself in favor. Diana Gonzalez, in favor. Mr. Webb, in favor. Amy Haynes, in favor. Mr. Ken Smith, in favor. Mr. Joshua Orfeld, in favor. Motion carries unanimously with 7 votes. Motion is approved. We go on to item 14C, consideration to approve the following appraisal calendar for the 2020-2021 school year. I digress.
Yes, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. Board policy DNA legal states a district shall establish a calendar for teacher appraisals and provide the calendar to teachers within 3 weeks from the first day of instruction. The appraisal period for each teacher must be included and all days for the teacher contract. So on this memo, the beginning date would be September 7, 2020, and the ending date would be May 17, 2021. And a copy of the calendar is next to your computer.
Questions for board members? No questions? Recommendation, please.
It is a recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the 2020-2021 appraisal calendar as discussed.
At the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mrs. Webb. Is there a second? Mr. Orfeld. All those in favor? Mr. Contreras, in favor. Myself in favor. Diana Gonzalez, in favor. Mrs. Webb, in favor. Amy Haynes, in favor. Mr. Ken Smith, in favor. And Mr. Orfeld, in favor. 7 votes unanimously approve the motion. Go on to item 14D, consideration to approve updates to the 2020-2021 school year calendar.
Yes, sir. Earlier in the presentation by Dr. Rios, there was a slide that covers some changes that administration is proposing. The teacher start day would be, instead of August the 3rd, it would be August the 17th. The first day of instruction, we're changing from August 10, which that calendar was approved back in June, changing it to August 26. The last day of instruction, instead of May 21st, it would be June 4th. And the work day for the teachers, instead of May 24th, it would be June 8th. Any questions on these recommendations for updating the 2021 calendar?
Any questions? Questions, Mr. Orfeld?
And just to clarify, this is the calendar that we're approving that will have the first 3 weeks online with the 1 week transition with the option, if we need to extend another 4 weeks, yes?
Yes.
To be totally transparent, the calendar doesn't indicate that that's what's going to happen, but it is a calendar that facilitates starting online on September 16th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mesa, if I could just clarify, the first 3 or 4 weeks of fully online, that doesn't necessarily necessitate board action. the board has already given the superintendent the leeway in making those decisions back when y'all approved that resolution back in March, and we're still in the same pandemic. The next 4 weeks, that would require board action, and that's the one that we need to be able to provide all that data. But this calendar does facilitate that, and that's where we're at right now.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Answer your
Yes.
question?
Thank you.
Okay, I want to reassure again that we will make that decision of either extending or just going with the calendar as presented, but we are going to have those options to extend as things progress, and hopefully it will be in a positive manner. When I'm saying positive, I'm saying in a much better way. I shouldn't use positive. In a much better way. But that decision again will be optional for us to have. That was the only question. Anybody else? Would you read the recommendation again?
Yes, sir. It is a recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the updates to the 2020-2021 school year calendar as presented.
Thank you so much. I think we've approved the calendar like 4 different times. Okay, there's a motion by Mr. Smith. Is there a second? Mr. Contreras. All those in favor, Mr. Contreras? In favor, myself in favor. Jana Gonzalez? In favor. Ms. Webb? In favor. Amy Haynes? In favor. Mr. Ken Smith? In favor. And Mr. Overflow? In favor. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the time is 8:13 p.m. We're permitted to go into closed session by sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, 551.084, 551.087 of the Government Code, Texas Open Meetings Act. If a final vote is required on any matter considered in closed session, it will be taken upon reconvening into open session. We are now in closed session. We're now going to open session. No action was taken in executive session. We're down to item 18A. The time is 9:12 p.m. We came out of executive going into now open session. 18A, consideration to approve the position of health counselor for Garfield Elementary. Ade Garcia.
Yes, good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve Elizabeth Overfelt for the position of health counselor as discussed.
Questions? You've heard the recommendation from administration. Is there a motion for approval? Motion from Mr. Smith, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor, Mr. Contreras? In favor. Myself in favor. Jana Gonzalez? In favor. Mrs. Webb? In favor. Mr. Smith? In favor. Josh Overfelt?
Abstention, sir.
Amy Haynes? In favor. We have 6 affirmative votes, 1 abstention. Motion carries. Item 18B is being tabled at this time. We'll go to 18C. Consideration to approve the personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations, reassignments. Ade Garcia.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the following new personnel. Special education teacher at Lamar Elementary, Diana Vara. ELA teacher at Del Rio Middle School, 7th grade, Stephanie Clark. Spanish teacher at Del Rio Middle School, 7th grade, Evelyn Galvan. Special education co-teacher at Del Rio Freshman School, Dora Moss. Assistant band director at Del Rio High School, Sydney Bonnell. Assistant athletic trainer at Del Rio High School, Kayla Ewing.
We've heard the recommendation from administration. Is there a motion for approval? Mr. Contreras, seconded by Mr. Smith. All those in favor, Mr. Contreras? In favor, myself in favor, Diana Gonzalez, in favor, Mrs. Webb, in favor, Mr. Smith, in favor, Mr. Overfelt, in favor, Amy Haynes, in favor. Motion carries unanimously with 7 votes.
Thank you.
Under Superintendent's Report, item 19 on your agenda, personnel updates, DK local.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa, members of the board. Mr. Mesa, we want to communicate to all of our employees that in the past, we were not prepared to allow individuals to work from home during the pandemic crisis. We were prepared to have them work from home when and if 100% of the personnel was sent home, such as was the case in March. But as we prepare to receive students again, there is some individuals who are at high risk should they contract the COVID-19. And for those individuals who are at high risk and who can perform all of the duties from home, such as be a remote instruction teacher, implementation of the regulation we developed would allow for that. Now, it doesn't cover everybody, and I want to be clear. We did as much research as we could, and unfortunately, there are some people who could not work from home. For example, a custodian could not work from home. A cafeteria worker couldn't work from home. A campus principal could not work from home. A nurse could not work from home. In a lot of instances, a teacher can, and perhaps an instructional aide. But this policy does provide an avenue for a high percentage of our employees should the need become necessary. Wish there was a plan that would cover everybody, but we're not there. And in all our research, we couldn't find one for everybody. But I am happy to report that implementation of DK regulation will help a whole lot of our employees. It's important because the federal aid only covers 12 days. And those 12 days, in some instances, may not even cover one COVID case. If you have a family member that contracts COVID, and then a week later, you contracted as well. That was 5 days you were with your child taking care of them, and then there's another possibly 12 days. That would go beyond what is provided for, and then you would be faced with taking your own days. And should you contract it again, then you would be in that same situation. But at least now with this regulation, we have a way of allowing individuals to work from home if they can meet all the requirements of their job. We're going to post this on the website along with our other regulations. So I invite all our employees to look at it. We're also going to ensure that our campus principals review that with their staff when they return, as well as department heads throughout the district. Thank you, sir.
Glad you mentioned that, sir, because there are certain requirements that they have to meet, and that magic number is 12 again before they have to use personal business days. Okay. There being no other item on the agenda, I will entertain a motion for adjournment. We have Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Mr. Smith. All those in favor, Mr. Gonzalez, in favor, myself in favor, Diana Gonzalez, in favor, Mrs. Webb, in favor, Mr. Smith, in favor, Mr. Overfelt, in favor, Amy Haynes, in favor. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.